Welcome to episode 25 of your CYSA Plus Prepcast. In today's session, we focus on one of the most critical responsibilities of any cybersecurity analyst, handling sensitive data within the enterprise. Whether you're monitoring access controls, managing DLP systems, or responding to a potential data leak, your ability to understand, protect, and track sensitive information is essential. From legal requirements to business continuity and reputational damage control, effective data protection is at the center of modern cybersecurity strategy. The CYSA Plus exam thoroughly tests your understanding of these responsibilities, and your mastery of this domain directly correlates to your real-world readiness as an analyst. Let's begin with a clear definition. Sensitive data refers to any information whose unauthorized access, disclosure, alteration, or destruction could cause harm to individuals, organizations, or regulatory compliance. Common types of sensitive data include personally identifiable information, credit card numbers, financial records, healthcare data, trade secrets, internal business documents, and intellectual property. As a cybersecurity analyst, you are responsible for ensuring that this data is protected against theft, misuse, or accidental exposure. The exam may ask you to identify which types of data qualify as sensitive and how different data types should be handled within various contexts. The first and most fundamental step in sensitive data protection is classification. Classification involves categorizing data based on its sensitivity level, which informs the level of protection required. Common classification tiers include public, internal, confidential, and restricted. Each tier corresponds to a set of access controls, encryption requirements, and handling procedures. Analysts must ensure that classification labels are applied consistently and reviewed regularly. Misclassification can lead to either overprotection, which wastes resources, or underprotection, which increases risk. The exam may test your ability to recommend classification schemes or identify where classification has failed to meet organizational policy. Classification helps prioritize security controls. For example, restricted data might require encryption in transit and at rest, multi-factor authentication for access, and restricted sharing policies, while internal data may only require audit logging and standard access controls. Once classification is defined, analysts can apply consistent protective measures. This includes configuring DLP systems, applying access restrictions, and ensuring logs are retained for audit purposes. Analysts use classification to quickly determine how to respond when data is discovered in an unauthorized location, such as an external email or public cloud folder. Compliance plays a major role in sensitive data handling. Analysts must understand how regulatory frameworks like the General Data Protection Regulation, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard define and mandate protection of sensitive data. Each framework includes detailed requirements for data handling, retention, transmission, and breach notification. Analysts need to be familiar with jurisdictional rules such as data residency requirements and reporting timelines for breaches. The CYSA Plus exam may include scenarios requiring you to align your response or policies with these regulatory mandates. Data loss prevention tools are central to enforcing data protection in enterprise environments. DLP platforms monitor data flows across endpoints, networks, email systems, and cloud services. These tools can identify, block, log, or quarantine sensitive data transfers based on pre-configured rules. Analysts must understand how to configure DLP policies, tune detection methods, and respond to alerts. False positives must be managed to avoid alert fatigue, while false negatives can result in missed breaches. On the exam, expect to see questions about selecting DLP rules, tuning policies, or identifying the root cause of a DLP failure. DLP systems use a variety of detection methods to identify sensitive data. Keyword matching is useful for structured data like credit card numbers. Regular expressions help analysts create precise detection patterns. Exact data matching compares content to known sensitive records. Document fingerprinting creates hashes of sensitive files and detects attempts to transmit copies. Analysts must know how to choose the right method based on the data being protected. You might be asked on the exam to decide which detection technique is best suited to a specific type of information or business use case. Encryption is a key mechanism in the protection of sensitive data. Analysts must ensure that data is encrypted at rest, in transit, and in some cases even while in use. Data at rest refers to files stored on disk. Data in transit refers to data moving between systems. Data in use refers to data being processed by applications. Each use case requires different encryption methods, and analysts must be able to configure and validate encryption settings on systems, storage arrays, and communication channels. Expect to encounter exam questions that test your knowledge of encryption deployment and monitoring. Key management is inseparable from encryption. If encryption keys are poorly managed, the effectiveness of encryption collapses. Analysts must enforce strong key generation, secure key storage, regular rotation schedules, and secure destruction of retired keys. Keys may be stored in hardware security modules or secured with file system permissions and encryption themselves. Analysts must ensure that access to keys is strictly controlled and audited. The exam may challenge your understanding of key life cycles or ask you to evaluate key management strategies in specific scenarios. Access control is one of the most powerful tools for protecting sensitive data. Analysts must configure and monitor authentication and authorization policies to ensure only the right users access the right data. Least privilege should be the guiding principle. Users should only have access to the data necessary for their role and nothing more. Analysts monitor access logs, review permissions regularly, and configure alerts for unusual access attempts. In the exam, you may be asked to recommend access control policies or to identify flaws in permission settings based on case studies. Secure data disposal is another critical component. When data is no longer needed, it must be removed in a way that prevents recovery. Analysts must ensure that proper data wiping tools are used, physical media is destroyed according to policy, and sensitive data is not left on backup tapes, printer memory, or end-user devices. Failing to securely dispose of sensitive data can result in significant exposure, especially during hardware decommissioning or office relocations. The exam may include scenarios about data disposal policies or ask you to select secure deletion methods for various types of storage media. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are more security courses on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. With a solid foundation in data classification, encryption, DLP, and access control, the next step is understanding how sensitive data is monitored, protected during transfer, and secured in response to real-world threats. Analysts must stay vigilant across the entire data lifecycle, continuously adapting detection strategies, policies, and incident response tactics to match evolving threats and enterprise needs. In this second half of the episode, we'll look at advanced monitoring techniques, insider threat detection, secure collaboration practices, breach response, vendor risk, compliance preparation, and governance strategies, all essential areas for both the CYSA Plus exam and real-world analyst work. User and entity behavior analytics tools provide analysts with a proactive means of identifying threats through behavioral monitoring. These platforms establish baselines for normal user and device behavior, then alert when anomalies occur. Sudden access to sensitive files, mass downloads, or attempts to access files outside a user's department may indicate insider threats or compromised accounts. Analysts must investigate these alerts and correlate them with other logs or known vulnerabilities to determine their credibility. The exam may ask how UEBA tools are used in sensitive data environments, or require identification of behavior patterns linked to data theft. Phishing and social engineering remain leading causes of data compromise. Analysts must be alert for indicators of such attacks, which often aim to deceive users into revealing credentials or accessing sensitive files. Suspicious emails, social media messages, or fraudulent support calls can result in sensitive data exposure. Analysts must monitor for signs such as users accessing links to known malicious domains or submitting credentials to untrusted login pages. Analysts also review email logs and browser histories for forensic evidence. CYSA Plus exam questions may include phishing scenarios requiring appropriate containment or mitigation responses. Secure file sharing policies are essential in preventing unintentional data exposure. Analysts must ensure that file sharing tools support encryption in transit and at rest, restrict external sharing by default, and log all access events. Cloud collaboration platforms like SharePoint, OneDrive, or Google Drive require close monitoring. Misconfigured sharing permissions or overly broad access links can expose sensitive documents. Analysts need to audit these configurations regularly, remove public access where not justified, and implement alerts for new sharing activities. On the exam, expect questions about evaluating file sharing risks or selecting secure sharing practices for sensitive data. Incident response takes on additional complexity when sensitive data is involved. Analysts must immediately assess the scope of the exposure, contain the breach, preserve forensic evidence, and initiate the appropriate notification process. Many regulations impose strict timelines for notifying regulators, customers, or other affected parties. The analyst's job includes identifying the data type exposed, who had access, and whether it was exfiltrated or merely exposed. Breach response playbooks must include specific procedures for sensitive data scenarios. The exam may present data breach situations requiring identification of the correct notification path or containment action. Vulnerability management is a core aspect of sensitive data protection. Analysts conduct regular vulnerability scans and targeted penetration tests against databases, file servers, and other data repositories. These tests identify weaknesses such as unpatched software, misconfigured services, or unnecessary access rights. Analysts must then prioritize remediation based on data sensitivity and exposure risk. Sensitive systems often require more frequent scanning and faster patch cycles. CYSA Plus questions in this area may involve interpreting scan results or identifying which vulnerability poses the greatest risk to a specific data store. Supply chain and third-party risk must not be overlooked. Many organizations share sensitive data with vendors, partners, or service providers. Analysts must evaluate whether these third parties follow security best practices, enforce contractual data protection clauses, and allow auditability. Risk increases when data is stored outside the organization's direct control. Analysts must regularly review vendor access, monitor file transfers to external domains, and restrict access based on least privilege. The exam may require identifying risks related to third-party data access or recommending mitigation strategies. Continuous monitoring is critical to the long-term protection of sensitive data. Analysts must configure and review logging for DLP systems, identity platforms, storage systems, and collaboration tools. Alerts must be tuned to reduce false positives while capturing signs of misuse. Common indicators include access from unusual locations, repeated attempts to access restricted folders, or large file transfers outside normal hours. Analysts use correlation tools and SIEM platforms to connect events across systems and validate alerts. Expect the exam to include scenarios that involve correlating alerts related to sensitive data access or leakage. Governance plays a central role in maintaining a strong sensitive data protection program. Analysts must help define and enforce policies that guide how data is created, shared, stored, and destroyed. Governance includes assigning responsibility for data protection to business units, regularly reviewing and updating policies, and holding users accountable. Analysts also support training programs that educate employees on data handling best practices and acceptable use policies. The exam may test your understanding of policy enforcement or ask how to align technical controls with organizational policy. Compliance audits are another area where analysts play an active role. When regulatory or contractual obligations require proof of data protection, analysts must provide documentation and evidence. This includes system logs, access reviews, encryption settings, and DLP policies. Analysts often participate in audit interviews, support risk assessments, and respond to findings. A well-prepared analyst ensures that evidence is complete, accessible, and aligned with regulatory requirements. On the exam, questions may ask what documentation is required during an audit, or how to prepare systems for compliance review. Continuous improvement ensures that sensitive data handling practices remain effective over time. Analysts must evaluate whether controls are functioning, investigate failed alerts, respond to changing business processes, and adopt lessons learned from prior incidents or audits. This may include refining access control lists, expanding DLP coverage, deploying new monitoring tools, or updating training materials. Sensitive data risks evolve as the organization grows, adopts new tools, or interacts with new partners. The CYSA Plus exam may include scenarios where analysts must identify outdated policies or recommend updates based on post-incident findings. To wrap up this episode, sensitive data handling is more than a technical task. It's a multifaceted discipline that requires analysts to understand data flows, monitor behavior, enforce controls, and support organizational governance. Whether configuring DLP systems, detecting data exfiltration, or preparing for a compliance audit, analysts must work confidently across teams, technologies, and regulatory frameworks. These are the skills that separate a capable technician from a trusted cybersecurity advisor. Keep practicing your monitoring workflows, reviewing regulatory requirements, and refining your response playbooks to ensure you're fully prepared for the CYSA Plus exam and beyond. Thanks for listening. To learn more about cybersecurity, please visit baremetalcyber.com. There you will find best-selling books, videos, and even more free cybersecurity training courses. Please subscribe to the Prepcast and our various podcasts. And thanks for listening.